The conference hall buzzed with polite conversation and the clinking of glasses. Sunlight poured through floor-to-ceiling windows, reflecting off polished marble and chrome accents. Executives in tailored suits moved gracefully, exchanging handshakes and business cards, while the hum of ambition filled the air. At the center of the hall, Lydia Hargrave, a rising socialite known for her sharp tongue, held court near the buffet. She laughed brightly, tilting her head as she noticed a new attendee arriving. Faris Al-Qadi, Arab billionaire CEO of Luminar Enterprises, recently relocated to London to expand his tech empire. He moved with quiet confidence, navy suit impeccable, shoes polished, posture flawless. His presence commanded attention without demanding it, a rare combination of authority and elegance. Yet, Lydia's eyes locked on him, mischief lighting her face. "Oh, listen to him," she whispered loudly to her companions, exaggerating his accent. "Is he really saying it like that?" Her laughter rang out, sharp and public. Nearby attendees glanced over, sensing the tension. Some smiled, awkwardly, unsure whether to intervene. Others recorded on their phones, curiosity overtaking discretion. Faris paused, calm but visibly attentive. He adjusted his cufflink, his dark eyes scanning the crowd. There was no anger in his gaze, only a quiet assessment. Every nuance of Lydia's mockery was catalogued. Her laughter, the way she exaggerated his words, the ripple effect through the room. One of Lydia's friends leaned in, whispering, "She's just having fun. Don't take it seriously." But Faris's presence silenced them internally. Fun at someone else's expense was not harmless, and he was a man who understood influence, power, and the subtle weight of accountability. He approached slowly, measured, commanding the room with his quiet energy. His voice, calm but resonant, carried across the hall. Laughter at the expense of another is never innocent. You may find amusement in mockery, but others see it differently, and consequences often follow. Lydia's laughter faltered. The room shifted subtly. Whispers spread. Phones subtly raised, recording every word, every movement. The public had become an unintended witness to her arrogance. Faris's eyes met hers, unwavering. Respect is not granted because someone is wealthy or foreign or different. It is demanded by how we treat others, and it is witnessed by everyone around us. Lydia's smile vanished, replaced by unease. Her friends fidgeted, whispering apologies that did little to mend the growing tension. The room, once a stage for social display, now felt like a courtroom of moral observation. Faris continued, calm but firm, "You have a choice. Continue to belittle, and your actions are seen, remembered, and judged. Or acknowledge the dignity of others and learn that influence and power are best exercised with integrity." The chatter in the hall dropped, replaced by a collective intake of breath. Phones recorded silently, capturing the moment when the arrogant met the principled. And for the first time that afternoon, Lydia felt what it was like to be truly observed, not for wealth or status, but for moral consequence. The murmurs in the hall grew quieter, phones still recording every movement. Lydia fidgeted, suddenly aware that the spotlight had shifted. What had been a harmless laugh for her friends was now a display of arrogance exposed before everyone present. Faris Al-Qadi remained calm, his gaze steady, commanding attention without raising his voice. He moved slowly toward the buffet table, subtly positioning himself so the entire room could hear. "Mocking someone for how they speak," he said, voice deliberate, "reveals more about your character than theirs. Confidence is not measured by derision, but by respect." The room absorbed his words. Colleagues and attendees glanced at Lydia, some recording silently, others exchanging looks of surprise. The subtle authority in Faris's tone carried weight, more impactful than any raised voice could have. Lydia's friends whispered nervously, trying to soothe the tension. "It's okay, Lydia, he's just—" Faris interrupted, still calm but piercing. "No one should be dismissed or humiliated, intentionally or otherwise. Every individual in this room is deserving of dignity. Public mockery, regardless of context, has consequences, and those consequences are witnessed, remembered, and shared." The subtle murmur of phones clicking and video recording spread across the hall. Every attendee now had a role as an observer, a witness to Lydia's arrogance and Faris's measured response. Lydia swallowed, a flicker of fear in her eyes. I didn't mean. Faris held up a hand, his expression unshakable. Intent is irrelevant when the impact is visible. You mocked someone publicly. Now, you must face the consequences, not from me personally, but from the world that has seen. The room shifted. Even the servers paused, noticing the tension. Some whispered quietly to one another, acknowledging that power, true moral power, had quietly entered the room and reshaped the dynamics entirely. Faris continued, softer now, yet firm. I will not humiliate you in return. That is not the lesson. The lesson is accountability. Your actions have been observed. You may reflect, apologize, or learn. The choice is yours. But the dignity of others is never optional. Lydia's laughter, once so confident, was gone. Her smile faltered. The cameras had recorded every syllable, and she could feel the eyes of everyone around her and the unseen audience online, weighing her behavior. Jamal, a young assistant who had witnessed the interaction quietly from the side, felt a mix of relief and awe. Not only had someone powerful intervened, but they had done so with principle, without arrogance, and without spectacle. The world, silent but watchful, was learning alongside him. Faris's gaze swept the room one final time. Calm, deliberate, unwavering. Respect is visible, and accountability is public. Every action echoes beyond the moment it occurs. Let this be a reminder. Dignity is not optional, and power is meaningless without principle. The hum of conversation returned slowly, but now with a note of reflection. Phones continued recording, whispers spread, and the moral weight of the encounter began to ripple through the room. Lydia looked down, suddenly realizing that mockery was no longer private amusement. It had consequences, witnessed not only by the room, but by the world. And for the first time, she truly felt the reach of responsibility and respect. By mid-afternoon, the conference hall had settled into an uneasy quiet. Lydia Hargrave sat at a table, fidgeting, phone in hand, aware that her actions were already being shared and discussed online. Her laughter had been captured, her mockery replayed, and the ripple effects of her arrogance were beginning to unfold. Faris Al-Qadi remained calm, standing near the center of the room, observing the reactions of the attendees. His presence alone seemed to command restraint. He spoke again, this time to the entire hall. This is not about humiliation or spectacle, he said, voice steady and deliberate. It is about accountability. Actions have consequences, and when they are witnessed, responsibility cannot be avoided. Several attendees nodded, some whispering into their phones, capturing the moment. Social media was already alive with clips from the hall, hashtags spreading rapidly. Hashtag respect matters, hashtag arabbillionaire stands up, hashtag lesson in dignity. Lydia's colleagues shifted uncomfortably, glancing between Faris and the growing buzz on their devices. The lesson was no longer subtle, it was public, visible, and undeniable. Faris approached Lydia slowly, his gaze calm but piercing. You mocked someone for the way they speak. You may not have intended harm, but impact outweighs intent. Others observed your arrogance, and now the world will judge it. Lydia swallowed, voice trembling. I didn't mean to. Faris held up a hand, cutting her off. Intent is irrelevant when visibility exists. Every action leaves a trace. Every slight is recorded, and every injustice can be addressed. Today, the lesson is that respect cannot be optional and power carries responsibility. The young assistant, Jamal, who had been quietly observing from the side, felt a swell of pride and relief. Someone with immense influence had intervened, not to shame, but to enforce principle. The moral authority in the room had shifted, and the ripple effect was unmistakable. Faris then addressed the crowd, capturing the attention of journalists and attendees alike. This is not just about one incident. It is about how we carry ourselves, how we treat those around us, and how the world watches. Let this be a reminder. Dignity is universal, accountability is inescapable, and true power lies in defending those who are often overlooked. Lydia lowered her gaze, Finally understanding that the world had witnessed more than a private misstep, it had witnessed a lesson in principle, in justice, and in moral courage. As phones continued recording, as whispers became stories, and as social media amplified message, Faris Al-Qadi remained composed. His calm presence ensured that the moment was not about spectacle, but about teaching a lasting lesson. Respect is never optional and power is never neutral. The conference hall, once a stage for mockery, had become a classroom of integrity, and Faris had ensured that the lesson would echo far beyond the afternoon, carried in every video, every conversation, and every mind that had witnessed it. By late afternoon, the story had left the confines of the conference hall. Clips of Lydia's mockery and Faris Al-Qadi's intervention were circulating rapidly on social media. Phones and cameras had captured every word, every gesture, and the moral authority he displayed. The ripple effect had begun. Faris moved deliberately toward Lydia, his posture calm, measured, commanding attention without aggression. "Your actions," he said, voice clear and steady, "were witnessed. They are no longer private. And now they will have consequences, not as punishment for me personally, but from the world that observed them." Lydia's colleagues murmured nervously, trying to defend her. "It was just a joke," one whispered. Faris shook his head, expression unwavering. "Intent is irrelevant. Visibility ensures accountability. You mocked someone publicly, and the impact has been recorded. Every action has a consequence, and every moment is remembered." A journalist stepped forward, camera poised. "Mr. Al-Qadi, what do you say to those who think this is excessive?" Faris looked into the lens, calm and resolute. "This is not excessive. It is necessary. Arrogance, unchecked, often hides behind laughter. Today it was exposed. Power is meaningless unless it protects the vulnerable, and influence carries the responsibility to act. Let this be a lesson. Dignity is not optional." Phones and cameras continued recording, amplifying the message far beyond the hall. Clips were being shared, reposted, and commented on globally. Every viewer witnessed the same lesson. Disrespect has consequences, courage has weight, and principle can command the attention of the world. Lydia's smile had vanished. Her arrogance had been replaced by anxiety as she realized the scope of what had been recorded. Her social influence, once unchallenged, was now under scrutiny. Faris turned back to the crowd, addressing them as much as Lydia. "Every act of mockery or derision is public. Every insult is observed, consciously or unconsciously, by others. True power is not dominance. It is the protection of dignity and the enforcement of principle. Let this be remembered." The audience, reporters, and bystanders absorbed every word. The lesson was clear and visible, and the moral authority Faris embodied ensured it would not be ignored. Even Jamal, watching quietly, felt a profound sense of relief. The Arab billionaire CEO had not only defended him, but he had transformed a moment of humiliation into a public affirmation of integrity, principle, and accountability. The sun dipped lower, golden light spilling across the hall as Faris Al-Qadi's presence reminded everyone. Visibility ensures accountability, moral courage inspires, and the world is always watching, whether one realizes it or not. By evening, the clips from the conference hall had gone viral. Social media feeds were flooded with videos of Lydia Hargrave mocking Faris Al-Qadi's accent, immediately followed by his calm, commanding intervention. News outlets ran headlines. "Arab billionaire CEO exposes public mockery, a lesson in respect. When wealth meets principle, Faris Al-Qadi stands against arrogance." Faris watched the reports from his office, navy suit, impeccable, hands folded. He didn't smile. He didn't gloat. He observed the ripple effect with the quiet satisfaction of a man who knew that influence, when wielded with principle, could inspire far beyond a single room. Daniel, his assistant, approached, tablet in hand. "Sir, the response is unprecedented. Millions have viewed it. Discussions are happening globally, boardrooms, schools, and even social groups are sharing the video and discussing respect and accountability." Faris nodded. "Good. Visibility ensures consequence. The world must see that power is not just wealth, but the ability to enforce moral responsibility." Meanwhile, Lydia Hargrave sat in a quieter room, scrolling through notifications on her phone. Her followers were debating her behavior, friends were sending messages urging reflection, and news outlets had begun reaching out for statements. The initial laughter had been replaced by scrutiny, analysis, and judgment. Her assistant hesitated. "Lydia, people are really talking. This could affect your reputation." Lydia's lips trembled. I never thought it would reach this far." Faris's words echoed in the minds of all who had witnessed the moment. Respect is never optional, and accountability is unavoidable when actions are visible. Back in the conference hall, journalists replayed Faris's measured response, emphasizing the lesson rather than the humiliation. Analysts praised his calm authority and moral courage, contrasting it against Lydia's arrogance. Every clip, every article, every discussion amplified the same message: dignity matters, and those who wield power have a responsibility to protect it for themselves and for others. Faris then addressed an international live feed, speaking directly to the wider audience. Today, a private act of arrogance was exposed publicly, and the lesson is simple. Mockery at the expense of another has consequences. Authority is not defined by wealth or influence, but by how one treats those around them. Integrity is not optional, it is visible. The message was clear, the impact undeniable. Lydia had faced humiliation, yes, but she had also been confronted with accountability in the most visible and undeniable way. The world had watched, learned, and reflected. Even those far from the conference hall could feel the weight of principle at work. Faris's calm, deliberate presence had transformed a fleeting moment into a lasting lesson in dignity, respect, and the power of moral courage. By nightfall, the story was no longer about laughter or mockery. It was about principle, accountability, and the undeniable authority of a man who used his power not for revenge, but for justice. By late evening, the world had absorbed the lesson. News channels, social media feeds, and professional networks replayed the same sequence. Lydia Hargrave mocking Faris Al-Qadi, followed by his calm, commanding intervention. What began as a private moment of arrogance had become a global demonstration of principle and moral courage. Faris Al-Qadi stood in his office, navy suit sharp against the warm glow of the city lights, overlooking the skyline. He didn't speak, he didn't smile, he simply observed the ripple effect of his actions. Every clip shared, every discussion sparked, every reflection provoked reminded the world of one enduring truth. Integrity is visible, and accountability is inescapable. Marcus Halton, a close friend and colleague, stepped into the room. "You didn't just teach her a lesson," he said quietly. "You reminded everyone, executives, colleagues, the public, what real authority looks like." Faris nodded, eyes still on the skyline. "Power without conscience is dangerous. Influence without principle is meaningless." Today the world watched, and the lesson is clear. Respect, integrity, and accountability define true authority. Back in London, Lydia sat quietly in her apartment, phone in hand. Her followers debated her behavior. Professional opportunities paused as the viral footage circulated. The arrogance that once shielded her confidence had been replaced with the heavy weight of reflection and responsibility. Faris's calm, deliberate presence had transformed a fleeting moment into a lasting global lesson. His words, repeated across news cycles and social platforms, emphasized not humiliation, but visibility, principle, and the moral weight of action. The city moved on, traffic flowing, pedestrians continuing their routines, but the story, the lesson, remained. People would remember it, reflect upon it, and learn from it. Faris had ensured that a single act of mockery had become a universal lesson in dignity and accountability. True authority is measured not by wealth, not by influence, but by moral courage. Arrogance, mockery, and derision may entertain in the moment, but principle and accountability endure. Faris Al-Qadi's intervention reminds us that visibility carries responsibility, that respect is never optional, and that every action, public or private, has consequences. Courage is not loud, it is deliberate. Power is not dominance, it is protection. And integrity, once exercised in the right moment, becomes a lesson the world cannot ignore. The lesson is simple. Dignity transcends circumstance, accountability cannot be escaped, and the impact of principled action resonates far beyond the moment it occurs. Wealth and influence may command attention, but it is integrity and moral courage that command respect. Today, tomorrow, and always,